Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'll be happy to take questions. If you have questions for me or for Kingston, you can put them on the chat. And yes,
Y-
non-technical people can ask questions. Please go ahead.
I think non-technical people always ask the most interesting questions anyway. So yeah.
Okay. Hi, Kings. Okay, it's Kingston and hi, Tenny. Thank you so much. I always like being part of this conversation. So I always have a technical person in waiting. So I'm a non-technical person, but I
Mm.
work with a lot of technical people. And I know that when Tenny started, he mentioned that this is for devs. But I've also realized that when these things happen, it now becomes everybody's problem in the organization. And that's why I'm asking my question, like,
Okay.
how, so again, a few years ago, I experienced something that felt like a cyber attack, but it wasn't. It was more of like an ERP system, you know. So you find out that, okay, there's a downtime, everything is scattered, we don't have access to data. And I realized that scale is not just about, like the tech is doing what they're doing, right? It's about continuity when things break. Because again, for us that are like human facing, so I'm in operations or business operations, we are now the one like trying to manage. So again, it's a collaborative effort between the tech team, the guys in business. So now I've noticed this across, I've also experienced it in healthcare. So again, which is even worse because again, you now have like patient data and all that good stuff. And security now becomes, it's not an afterthought. Like everybody now has to start running around, like, what are we going to do? So my question is, how do you build a security mindset that is embedded from day one, like, and not just after the incident, across teams, across the organization, right? And what role can operators play in shaping that mindset before incidents become like the teacher?
Tammy, do you want to go, or do you want me to go?
Go for it. Go.
Um, Viv, right? You're the one that asked the question, and fantastic question,
Yes,
very
I
lovely
do.
question. Um, the answer kind of is in the question. You just have to start from day one. You have to list down the processes, your checklist, things that, steps that you have to take if certain situations occur. Um, Awareness training, regular awareness training. Most organizations have this security and privacy training they do every 6 months, where you run through the do's and don'ts, don't click links on emails, don't what's the word? Don't um, even phone calls. Don't when people call you, there's this thing called spoofing attacks. Uh, yes, spoofing attack where people pretend to be like this and they're like, hey, you're looking to get in touch with this person, stuff like that. You're always careful about how you respond on calls and don't just take people word for who they say they are or what they say they are. Um, Things like that. The point is that you have to start from the onset. Now, there are security really became a thing in the recent decade, I think. Yeah, I think from like 2010 upward really became a thing. People didn't really take security that serious early on. So I understand why some of these older companies might not, it might be kind of too late for them to take it seriously from the beginning, but it's still not too late. They can start from where they are, start, like the security and privacy training, awareness training that I mentioned. You can have like chat boards and emergency contacts of devs. I'm sorry, I said devs of security personnel. If you have such on your payroll, who to contact in such a situation, who to email, who to phone, um, like yes, first aid things to do. So, for instance, one of the smartest things to do, if you notice at the very moment that your system has been taken over, disconnect that system from the internet, get that system off. That's like level one. Just get it off, turn it off, disconnect from the internet, just shut it down. That doesn't mean you solve the problem. You just limited the impact that compromised system will have. That's like emergency, like extreme situations, first aid steps to take in that kind of scenario. I hope that gives you some idea of what I'm getting at, Vic. It's
Yes,
not
it
too
is.
late. Yeah, it's not too late. There are steps you can take for whichever company. Then you want to add anything?
So I'll say the awareness training, basically the awareness training, and people, getting used to the fact that, you know, it's not the world isn't so happy, about your system. They're not just too excited about it or to use it the way you would. And I think for developers, many developers wake up when they experience, that those attacks, and they say, "Wow, this is what the world is like." And then they look back at their code and say, "Oh my God, I thought this was just I submit to the form, I hit the database like you were talking about." But you just become conscious. And I think that's what we need. It's in the like you were speaking in the early 2000s, it was very difficult to get management to, justify a budget for security, to say this is, these are the tools we want to use. It just looked like, look, get the job done. And some companies still operate that way. It's like developer productivity. What have you shipped? Forget about security. We'll deal with that later. But then it comes back to bite us, and then we go back. So I think that awareness, that training to be able to appreciate that will help. Okay, I think we have. I hope that answers, Viv.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I raised my hand. I do have a question. My name is Femi. I'm not a developer, but I have a developer mindset, and I work with a lot of developers. I've been in tech for a few years now, so I've gone around quite a bit, and I've seen a lot. So I remember WannaCry and then a few other major incidents that have happened. So and I've worked a lot as a freelancer, and this is where my question is coming from. So the context of Vivian's question, Vivian or Viv, sorry if I'm not saying that rightly, then Kingston's response, Tenny's response, it's all looking at this from the corporate lens, like you work in a structured organization. Now let's flip it to freelancers, right? So if you work as a freelancer, you probably have your own rules and then maybe a few that you have to follow with the organizations that you're contracting with and all that. How will you be able to maintain discipline, especially when you're using your own private system, you're not using a system that has firewalls built into it, like many organizations will give to you, or like Zscalers and the rest of them that will prevent things that you can access or can't access. Basically, your client has told you, oh, build this for me, and then I would say freelancers even are more culpable for going to places like, say, GitHub to pull code because they want to get stuff done easily and really quickly. How do they then get into that mindset? Again, freelancers, nobody is organizing and enforcing training on them, right? They are in their own world and they can do their own thing. And as a freelancer, you're not necessarily working with the timelines that organizations have. I mean, you commit to timelines, but you're not working in sprints like them. So you feel you want to get stuff done really quickly. You may not have the QA process that they've got on their teams. You don't have peer review for someone to help you catch something that you would miss. Let's talk a bit about that, or look at this question from the angle. Or, I mean, Vivian's question from the angle. Yeah.
Fantastic,
So,
Femi. Lovely.
yeah.
Lovely. Fantastic. The first thing that came to my mind as you were talking is there's usually, at least in this time and day, there's usually like what's the word now? There's when you do things in a certain way, there are like things that would result from your actions. Okay. So if you do not take the right, sorry, what?
No, I said repercussions from.
Thank you. That's the best word. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you very much. Repercussions is the best hindrance for that freelancer. You want to have a good relationship with your clients, right? The people you're contracting with and all that. If you are the source of their cybersecurity problems too many times, at some point they would have to let you go because they can't keep. So you the freelancer would have to sit up. Okay, I understand that yes, the freelancer wants to get things done, but that's the thing about haste. I really don't subscribe to those. Since you've been around and you mentioned being a freelancer, I'm sure you know the whole move fast and break things is a very popular dev phrase. I keep trying to remember if it was Zuckerberg or Facebook that made that thing popular. I'm not very sure who, but I've never liked that phrase. I personally have never, and I was a developer, but I just don't like it. I don't like the idea of just building things quickly just to get it out the door. Because I usually, I ended up fixing a lot of my colleagues' codes back in the day. I used to code. I used to fix a lot of their issues. I used to hate that stuff. Anyway, the point is, put measures in place. And the beautiful thing about things like doing security and awareness and training and putting all these like security processes and test automation, automated QA processes in place as well. Early on, it might be slow. It might make you might feel slow. You might feel like you're not getting things done that as quickly as possible. But when you get used to it, it becomes quicker because it becomes like a reflex. It becomes like second nature. It becomes like a habit, and you pick it up and you become quicker in your processes and how you churn out things. You just have to start, okay? And then the other point that you mentioned, the major problem I think for freelancers and taking up security process. Security is expensive. Tony mentioned about how back in the days, management didn't used to like didn't used to care about security much and having a budget for security and all that. But now that everybody's waking up to it and they are realizing that security is expensive. So that's the one place I feel for freelancers. They are not usually awash with resources. Just do the little you can do as much as you can do. Every little thing is appreciated. Security really is in layers. It's that's why you have things like MFA. You authenticate the first time, you authenticate this other way. Security in layers. Every little thing you can put on top makes it harder. Hackers are lazy people, generally speaking. They want to just get the quickest thing they can get and
they
get
just take advantage
quickly
of
and then
backdoors or
so if it's like I said, it's like the scenario I cited that I've experienced. If you make the simple mistake of creating an account that you do not require a username or password to log in, someone will try that. I mean, you don't need any hacking tool for that. All you have to do is try that. So even the basic of having a complex password, having MFA, frustrates some hack from attackers. You understand? So, like for instance, the freelancer can do that. Can make sure that every single product that has some authentication module that is building would never allow for simple passwords. I assure you, some applications still allow typing
You'd be
AAAA
amazed
6
that
times.
in 2025, there
Yes.
are apps and websites that you can still sign up to using disposable email.
Exactly, stuff like that. So you want to prevent that. I dropped a link in the chat. This is not necessarily tailored to application development, but it's about this stuff on security and how picking up the security habits around your devices, around apps and all that stuff. At your spare time, check through it. It's watchyourhack.com. It's a very fantastic resource. I go to it every now and then. Very useful stuff.
Yeah, I do have another contribution. Unless somebody else has something to go, I'd like to go again. So it's back to Tenny's part of the presentation where he's talking about the mindset again, and I'll be speaking, say, as a freelancer, although I work in the corporate sector now, but I'm still speaking because speaking as a freelancer because in the past, let's say in the last 5 years, right, entry into tech has become a lot easier, right? We've got tools, we've got platforms, and then in the last 2 years or so, ChatGPT and all the other language models that are making things quite easy, right? You just put in natural language and then it's able to spit out code. Just 2 days ago, Google released their AI for UI platform, so level entry, but then it comes down to like the fundamental principles. I would say that if we have any freelancers or those who are just starting their tech journey here, it's really important to have mentors, even if their only role for you is just to help you look over things. Yes, you're really good at what you're doing, you are paying attention and all that, but someone, with a different foundation or a foundation in tech that is not the novel or avant-garde type tech. I'm not talking down on anyone, but I'm just saying if you've recently entered into tech, it would be nice if you've got someone really good who's been in this for quite some years now and, has developed that natural instinct. There's a word you use, Kingston, I can't remember, but it's become second nature to them to be skeptics, to be have that paranoia. I just think it's something really good to develop because on your own, it's really hard to maintain that discipline. But if you're in a work environment where any mistake could cost the organization, when you do those trainings, you hear about, I work in an organization where we are regulated by the FCA, so you know what it will cost you if there's a breach in customer data, if there's a leak and all of that. So as an individual working, you may not know the temerity of those kind of situations, and might not care, oh, I will just lose that gig and I'll move on to the next one. But yeah, really great talk from you both.
Okay, thank you very much, Femi. I think Yele's hand was up for a long time. Does he have a question? Yeah, go for it.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so I had two questions, but the first one was around how startups could put up security measures, considering they don't want to invest in security personnel because they may not have those funds. They may still be trying to get revenue before even crossing into profitability. But this person that was speaking earlier, speaking on freelancers, I think he answered the bulk of my questions around putting up firewalls and peer reviews. So that would be a very simple way to implement security measures in a startup that doesn't have too much disposable income. So my second question, though, I'm not so sure if it was really answered. So I would just like to ask. So it has to do with environments. I would like to pose it towards Kenny. So you're working in an environment where your software development happens across maybe your staging, testing, and production. So I want to ask, your security measures, are they going to be duplicated across your environments, or is production going to be more secure than your staging environments? Because continuous integration and development needs to occur. So what's the way to go about that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. So I'll just comment about the earlier, thing we're talking about freelancers, smaller companies, and from my own experience, I find that doing work for larger companies, they're prepared to take work from freelancers, and then they've put in policies and processes and subject the freelancers to those policies so that every code you're bringing in is reviewed internally, and they have the ways to run the pen test and all that. So they have those things as standard. And in fact, it helps those smaller companies to find out, okay, this is what needs to be done, and gives that exposure. So it's people who don't have that exposure or just believe that, well, the world is, their own world, and then that's the problem, So that's what I would say. For startups that may not have the funding, there are services like, virtual CISO, where you have someone who you don't pay the full, price that you pay security professional, but you have him like for a fraction of his time, and then he's there to ensure that your information, security program is going, and all the audits and all the tests that you need to do are checked. So you can have that. That's an option where you can share the resources like that. Okay. Talking about the environment, I would say, because I have seen attacks where production was fine, but dev was showing me, error messages that gave me a clue as to what to do in production to attack. So there's no point leaving a door, unchecked because it's dev or because it's testing. So I'll say, if you have a firewall or you have your systems in a, in a zone that is more secure, put all of them in there and secure all of them because they are all yours. If something happens to dev, it could give an attacker the ability to know what to do in production. In fact, there are attacks where you see something in one version of the API, and then something has been fixed. You know how dev is ahead sometimes, or test is ahead of production, and you haven't deployed some changes there, or some features are there which maybe you have some kind of switch in production that you will turn this on later, but if I have visibility of dev, then it gives me an idea of what's happening in production. So I'll say just secure everything, lock everything.